Will, let's discuss this with my next guest. I'm joined by Bill Richardson. He's the former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, former governor of New Mexico, and he's visited North Korea on several occasions going back to the 90s, has had meetings with top North Korean officials. What's your reaction to this late-breaking development, Governor?
Well, I'm guardedly optimistic. It's significant if North Korea confirms two things. One, that they're willing to talk about nuclear issues. And secondly, that they're willing to stop missile and nuclear activity during these talks. Now, the North Koreans haven't confirmed this, but if it's true, it's potential breakthrough. Now, I think the South Korean president deserves credit for making the moves on the Olympics by holding back with North Korea and saying, I will visit North Korea in late April, but only if you agree to talk to the United States on nuclear issues. And it looks like he got what he wanted. So it's a small step forward. But as you know, with North Korea, everything moves slowly and dangerous.
Well, do you give the President Trump, any credit for this potential diplomatic breakthrough, his tough talk, his threats against Kim Jong-un? You think that has played a significant role?
Well, I give him credit for the increased sanctions. I think going to the UN, going to countries around the world to put pressure on North Korea with oil, foodstuffs, energy sanctions. I think they're the toughest ever. I give him credit there. I don't give him credit for the tweeting and the insulting, and although I don't like Kim Jong-un insulting the president either, I think you have to move forward now with traditional diplomacy. Now, what is important is, where do we go from here? I think it's important to focus on the diplomacy track, exactly what we're going to do with North Korea in terms of this dialogue. No preconditions, but at the same time, do we insist a complete denuclearization or a halt in missile and nuclear activity, artillery? Clearly, a reduction of tension in the peninsula is what the South Koreans wanted. They're the most vulnerable. And if this moves forward, that's going to happen, and that's good.
But is it realistic at all to believe that Kim Jong-un and his regime in North Korea will ever give up its nuclear capability?
I don't believe they ever will, but I think we should at the same time have that as a goal. If they give up, for instance, freezing their ballistic missile activity that threatens the United States, their nuclear activity, there's a reduction of tension at the border and Panmunjom, the DMZ, if there are humanitarian talks on the recovery of our remains, human rights between North and South Korea, reduction of tensions can be a combination of soft power, but also finding ways to the North and South and the Japanese that are vulnerable too, to engage in further diplomacy talks. Wolf, I think this is good. You know, everybody's pessimistic when they think of North Korea. But the North Korean leader, I've always said, has had an end game. And I think his end game is a big negotiation with everybody. I don't think he'll give up its nuclear weapons, but he clearly does not want a military confrontation with the United States. I think he clearly knows this country's in deep economic trouble. I think the sanctions are biting. So this is a new chapter, and I hope the president, the administration, has a plan. Where do we go from here? I hope it's diplomacy. I hope it's a Secretary of State. I hope it's traditional diplomacy instead of military threats and tweets insulting the North Korean. Let's take advantage of this very positive development.
It's potentially very significant. The Senate Armed Services Committee has been holding hearings today on worldwide threats facing the United States. I want you to listen to what the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency said about North Korea. Listen to this.
The big change that we've seen from his father to Kim Jong-un is the rigor of training. Prior with his father, you did not have the level of discipline, you did not have the level of rigor that we would normally associate for what you do to get a force ready to go to war. Kim Jong-un is taking that readiness aspect very, very seriously. They do not have a capability that could, reunite the peninsula. But there is a significant capability that's over the 38th parallel in terms of the amount of damage that they could do with their conventional forces in a conflict.
And people aren't necessarily fully aware of how much damage could be done. Forget about nuclear capabilities. Forget about intercontinental ballistic missiles. The conventional warfare that's positioned by the North Koreans along the DMZ is enormous and could cause extraordinary casualties.
That's right, Wolf. And you're talking about 25 million South Koreans that are directly vulnerable. You're talking about 30,000 American troops that are right there, plus the 50,000 in Japan. You're right. The artillery of the North Korean, the capability is very strong. They've got almost 2 million individuals in arms, men in arms. Training has been accelerated. You're absolutely right. This man is different than his father. With a father, as you recall, we were there, you could kind of make a deal with him. But with this young man, I think he has a plan. I think he's unpredictable, but he's somebody that we're going to have to contend with. And he's somebody that seems to be getting his act together in terms of saying, this is what I want. And Western countries, six-party talk countries, U.S., South Korea, Japan, now you have to come to me. And I think this is what's happening right now.
And we'll see if the North Koreans launch another intercontinental ballistic missile or have another nuclear test. They haven't had anything since November, and we'll see how they react to next month's scheduled U.S.-South Korean military exercises, which, of course, they always, as you and I know, always hate. Governor Bill Richardson